for having organized this panel discussion on this very important report that has just been produced by UNDP, and also to commend and thank UNDP for the report. I think the question that was posed related to how I look at this in terms of Africa's renaissance and Pan-Africanism, and wish to say right at the outset that again, joining the the previous speakers, that I think this report focusing on the rise of the South, human progress in a diverse world, is actually timely, particularly as we are celebrating 50 years since the establishment of our continental organization. These celebrations, as we're all aware, have given us the opportunity to actually reflect on where we are coming from, where we are today, and where we should be heading to. And I think if you look at the report, it does actually highlight a number of issues that Africa, I think as a continent, really needs to take into account. I mean, the issues highlighted, the role of the developmental state is clearly important as we reflect on what we need to do for the future. Clearly, it has been shown that markets do not work perfectly well, given a number of imperfections within the market. And so the state does have a role to play. There are also areas whereby purely private sector intervention would not be possible, probably because of the huge capital outlays. When you look at the issues of equity, clearly these are also important, because yes, we've been talking about the rise of the South, we've been talking about the rise of the African continent, but issues of equity have not been adequately addressed. Growth has been impressive. We've been talking about over 5% growth, at least in the past 10 years or so, except during the global financial and economic crisis. But then you find that this growth has also not been able to take into account issues of equity. And so I think raising this matter in this report becomes important. Issues of voice, again, as we are celebrating 50 years since the establishment of our organization and mapping the way forward, we should be looking at ensuring that we take on board the different voices, and so this is important. When I look at our work on integration in Africa, you find that we probably may not be making a lot of progress simply because we have not been able to take everybody on board with us. And so if Africa is indeed to accelerate the process of regional integration, issues of voice and participation become important. But I think when we talk about voice and participation, it's not only within the context of our national, regional, and continental development issues, but also within the global arena. But again, I would want to say that, of course, the voice that Africa would have within the global arena would also depend very much on the willingness and readiness of our partners to ensure that we effectively participate in the global development issues. Now, having said that, I think issues of sustainability are also important. And again, I'm looking at this in terms of our celebrations, in terms of how we are looking into the future. As it has been said by Excellency Obasanjo, indeed, if you look at growth in Africa, largely you're talking about the mineral sector. So countries with minerals have done exceptionally well in terms of their growth performance, but there are also those countries that have experienced growth owing to implementation of some prudent macroeconomic policies. But essentially, I think we're looking at growth that has emanated from probably this one particular important sector. And we need to be asking ourselves the questions, but is this sustainable? And so, as we are discussing Pan-Africanism, we are discussing African Renaissance, I think these are issues we need to look at. And issues of diversification of our economies, therefore, become important. And I think these issues need also to be reflected in these discussions. And then again, the relevance of this document. We are not only looking at where we are today and where we are going, but there are also issues of the post-2015 development agenda, the MDGs as we're approaching 2015. I think some of the issues that have been raised in the report, some of the recommendations actually could be taken on board, as President Kufu also indicated, that this is a wealth of information for the continent. I think one thing that I thought needed also maybe to come out quite clearly is this whole question of promoting regional integration. Yes, there's a discussion of that, talking about trade and infrastructure, but I think we also need to come out quite clearly, I think, in this regard. Yes, as individual countries, we have shown some progress, but I think this progress could actually be better enhanced if indeed, as a continent, we did pursue this agenda vigorously, promoting trade and regional integration. We have the statistics. I mean, you look at intra-African trade, low levels of trade within the continent, 10, 12%. And I think we are able to do more. Yes, there are initiatives, but indeed the problem is that one of implementation. So I thought this is something that we need to look at. And President Obasanjo, probably with your permission, I thought I could also mention the fact that I think the issues of financing that also become quite important when we're talking about sustaining, this growth within the continent. We've been looking at alternative funding sources, and President Obasanjo has been chairing a high-level panel on this. I believe it is actually time that the continent did have a decision on this matter to see how best we can mobilize resources for the continent. Of course, this is for our continental organization, but we should also be looking at mobilizing resources within our economies. So, Madam Chairperson, what I would want to say is that indeed this report is very timely. It raises a number of important issues which would provide lessons for our African countries, our regional economic communities, as well as for our continent. But I would also want to say that there are issues that need to be discussed to see how we ensure that what progress has been made so far is actually sustained on a longer term basis. I thank you.